Hi, I'm Tig Tillinghast. I am CEO of Forest Metrics, a firm that makes software for foresters, arborists, and because we're all very interested in conservation issues and habitat issues, we've made a pro bono product called Etuity, and we charge money for it, but our time that we put into it, essentially we don't charge for. And this has been very rewarding, and we think that we are offering something that hasn't been out there on the marketplace for land trusts that have particular needs. So the gist of it is that our software allows you to monitor properties based on very specific easement-borne requirements, reserved rights, prescriptions, so that rather than just generally monitoring a property by walking around and seeing what you see, very specific things can be monitored and tracked over time. That's the 30-second version of things. But the 5-minute version of things I can show you, when you open up the software, which works on iPhones and iPads, Macs and PCs, it doesn't work on Android. People are typically out in the field just using this, but back at the office they'll be using a computer, and when you pop up the interface, it will show you a list of properties. That's the first part of the interface. And this is actually up on the cloud. This is up on the internet. So you can use it directly on the internet, or obviously if you're in the field on a preserved property, you likely don't have internet access. You'd probably be using it right on your mobile device and then later syncing it up to the cloud. So it's quite flexible. Well, I'm going to tap into this fake property we have in here just to use as an example. And you see we have lots of details about that property, a list of contacts, and information. We call these binary fields. These are essentially yes or no fields. Is this property involved in grant reporting? Is this property riparian? Is there another easement with another land trust? These sorts of things are all set out right here as checkboxes, because depending on your workflow, that might actually change how things happen, how things are audited, how communications are sent out about reports. And there's lots of notes and maps and all that good stuff. We even have a customer relationship management section that can help you manage communications, both in terms of stewardship and separately in terms of donations and other types of communications. We can actually manage donations and communications and do thank you letters and things of that sort, but that's not what we're concentrating on. We're concentrating on the stewardship, and that's what we see down here. This is all about the elements that are being monitored and what's going on there. But before we dive into that, we also have a section where we can put in documents. This is unlimited. You can put in as many documents as you like, and importantly, not only do the scanned copies of the documents go in here, but we can write notes about them and say, what's the effective date of this document? When was it superseded? Was it approved? When was it approved? Who approved it? So we have a document tracking so that if we're looking back at a monitoring report from 2009, we can tell from in here what was the controlling regime. What did the deed look like? What did the easement look like at that time? So this is the meat of it. Down here, we go into the actual monitoring stuff. And to set that up, when we first get an easement in the system, we put in what we call objectives. These are elements that can be monitored. It might be a particular location. There may be a chemical spill that is being monitored. There might be a house site that is allowed to be developed, but maybe that house site is allowed to be developed only up to a certain year or a certain generation. There are lots of odd things in easements, and we can place those here, and we'll show you how in a bit. And then they can be monitored in the right way. So, for instance, we might have a reserved right for a house site, and it's for 2 house sites, and one of them has been used. this system will tell us that there's one remaining house site that can be used, and it will flag it if there's more than that, or it will flag it if it is developed after the date that it is allowed to be developed. So what we've done is we've set up some arbitrary objectives that can be visited, and as a steward, I'm going to sign in. I'm going to be seeing only those properties that I'm stewarding. And I'm also going to be seeing, when I go into a property like this one, like Lucy, I'm going to be seeing which ones have been marked to visit. Now that's something that the stewardship director likely did. The stewardship director can go in here, as I'm doing now, and say, gosh, we haven't monitored this one and this one in a while, so I'm going to go ahead and check them and make sure that whoever's assigned the current stewardship is going to hit that next time. So when I come in as a steward, I'm going to jump into my interface to go off in the field and take this with me and start going places, have this help direct me to where I need to go, and then enter it in the information of what I see. The interface that we have is actually the report. So if I click on this report for today happens to be February 14th, I'm going to see this document that's actually going to be a copy of what gets printed out, much like you would with a paper form if you're going out and filling things in. So I can just touch this button and it's going to give me a start time. When I'm done, I'll click this button and it's going to calculate an elapsed time. There's lots of information up here that I can enter that is about the whole visit. Did I contact the landowner? Were there any encroachments? Yes, there was an encroachment that I noticed. If I say yes, it's going to pop up this box. It's not going to let me say yes, there was an encroachment and then not say anything about it. It's going to require that I write a note. And if I'm using a mobile device, I can do that by dictating. I can just speak into this in the field and it will write out what I'm saying. This makes it easier and allows the land trust to get better compliance with people actually putting in useful information. I can submit my map trail, the little GPX trail that shows where I went on the property. But again, the meat of it is those objectives. And I see that in this visit that I popped into, there's already been a few visits to different objectives. But if I need to look to see where I want to go next on the property, I would click on my objectives list and I'd see that there was one that I haven't visited, and indeed there's a checkbox there. That's because back here, our stewardship director checked it off because they want us to go see it. So, okay, I need to go to that boundary pin, and I'll just click on that, and it's going to bring me to this objective. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new visit to it. Last time someone was here was in October of last year. So I'm going to add an objective, and that's going to allow me to enter in information that doesn't overwrite the previous information. I can, if I'm not sure where this objective is, I can go ahead and have it tell me. I can click on this, and it'll show me a map. I can get directions. I need to go 200 yards northwest. It'll direct me where I need to go. And once I'm there, I can make my observations. And more often than not, there's nothing really to know. You go there, okay. It's the fact that you've been there is the important factor. So I'm going to put I was here. What's the big deal? We may have a picture that we want to add. Oftentimes, objectives that stewardship directors want people to go to aren't so much expecting there to be a problem, but to monitor a situation to see what the size of the situation is. An example I can think of off the top of my head is in a wetland, there's a Phragmites infestation. And over the years, if you're taking pictures of that, you will actually have a longitudinal view of how quickly that's spreading across the wetland. So it can be really useful in a lot of ways. Well, anyway, we finished going to this objective. I click it away, and we're going to find ourselves back here at our objectives list. We visited all the objectives on that property, and now when I come back here, we see them. We see where I visited on a map, and I can go ahead and submit this, print it, send it off as a PDF by email. Now back at the ranch, the stewardship director will see this and say, okay, there's a February 14th report, great. I need to jump in and look at that and approve it. And she'll have access to those buttons or make notes of, oh gosh, we really do need to go up there and see about this problem that they noted. So that is the system in 5 minutes. The key difference being that we are in a much more articulated way defining what needs to be monitored. And it's not all legalistic. It's not that all of the objectives have to be specific things mentioned in an easement document. We are often adding objectives that are things like, gosh, we saw a great gray owl at this part of the property, or here's the part where last year there was a rare flower and we don't see it. These things can be added in. Those things can be added in and even filtered in reports so that you can do a separate report for the landowner just to show the wildlife stuff. There's a lot of power to the data that gets in here that might not initially be used, but over time, as data accretes, becomes more and more obvious that that's something that can be used for good. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at forestmetrics.com. That's metrix.com. We have a section there for Etuity. And we're always happy to talk, give a demonstration, and see if we can be useful to folks. Thank you very much.